If my sister shows up with that cane tonight, redirect her. I can't have that look in the photos. I heard my brother's voice come through the event coordinator's earpiece, and I stopped walking. The sidewalk outside his brand new Charlotte restaurant was wet from an hour of October rain, and I was standing there in a navy wrap dress I hadn't worn since before my husband Paul died, holding a bunch of white tulips I'd bought at a gas station on the edge of the city because I wanted to bring something, and I didn't have enough in my account for the florist. The coordinator was a young woman in a black blazer. She heard it too. Her hand flew up to click off the radio, but the words had already come through the speaker and landed on the wet pavement between us. She looked at me. I looked at her. I looked down at my cane, the carbon fiber one I'd finally let my physical therapist talk me into after spending 3 years on the cheaper aluminum version, and I understood exactly what I was looking at. My name had been crossed off a list. I nodded once at that young woman because whatever was happening inside her chest at that moment was not her fault, and then I turned around and walked back to the parking garage at the pace my fused lumbar discs allowed, which is not fast. I found my 2009 Civic on the 3rd level and I sat down in the driver's seat and closed the door. I set the tulips on the passenger seat. I touched Paul's carved maple spoon in my purse. He'd made it the summer before we got married, a lopsided little thing with his initials scratched into the handle, completely impractical, the most important thing I own. I opened my banking app, navigated to the scheduled transfer screen, found the $1,500 automatic payment set to go out in 5 days, and I canceled it. Then I drove 3 hours back to Raleigh in the rain. Let me take you back 2 years, because this story doesn't start in a parking garage. It starts at my kitchen table on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks after I buried Paul, when my brother Cole called at 11 and told me he was about to lose everything. Cole was 32 then, and he'd spent 4 years working restaurant kitchens in Asheville, learning the line, learning inventory, learning how to run a dining room the way you learn a language. By throwing yourself in and making every mistake until your hands finally know what they're doing without being told. He was talented, genuinely, legitimately talented, not in a way that needed encouraging, but in a way that already had a plan attached to it. He had a lease signed on a space in Charlotte's Noda neighborhood. He had a concept and a menu and 3 investors who'd put in a combined $40,000. What he didn't have was enough collateral to secure the SBA loan his bank required to cover the build-out and the first 6 months of operating costs. He needed a co-signer with a clean credit history and verifiable income. He called me. I was sitting at that kitchen table with Paul's coffee mug still in the drying rack, still in the dress I'd worn to the reception after the funeral, and my brother was on the phone and he was crying, not performing, just scared. The kind of scared that asks nothing, just is. I said yes before he finished explaining. I co-signed the $85,000 business loan, and then, because the loan covered build-out but left his operating reserves thin, I set up a $1,500 automatic monthly transfer from my account to his business checking. He knew about the transfer. We talked about it once, agreed it was temporary, a bridge. He said he'd pay me back once the restaurant turned its first real quarterly profit. I told him not to worry about it. That was 24 months ago. He never paid any of it back. We stopped talking about it. What I didn't tell him was what that $1,500 cost me every single month. I was on disability after a workplace injury, 2 herniated discs in my lumbar spine from lifting a 280-pound patient during a code blue in the ER. I'd been an ER charge nurse for 11 years. By the time Paul got sick, I was drawing a $2,600 monthly disability check and supplementing it with part-time nursing documentation reviews from home. After he died, there was a small life insurance payout. I put most of it in a CD and lived carefully off the rest. The way you live when you know the number in your account is the whole number, not a layer of something bigger underneath. The $1,500 I sent Cole every month was more than half my disability check. I postponed my epidural injections, a spinal treatment series that cost me $800 out of pocket after insurance twice, because the $800 aligned with months when the restaurant hit an unexpected expense and Cole's operating cushion dropped. I told my doctor I'd reschedule when things settled down. Things never settled down. My windshield cracked in February from a highway rock. The crack spread from the bottom left corner toward the center over 8 weeks. I drove with it. $340 for a replacement was $340 I didn't have. My physical therapist told me in March I needed a high-back lumbar support chair for the hours I spent at my desk doing documentation work. She showed me one for $480. I ordered it, then canceled the order 2 days later when I ran the monthly numbers and realized I'd be left with $140 until the following first. I went back to the kitchen chair and the $12 foam lumbar roll from Walmart. Cole didn't know any of this. He didn't know because I didn't tell him. What I allowed myself to feel, in the quieter hours, was that not knowing should have gone both ways. That a brother receiving $1,500 a month from his recently widowed sister might at some point look at the situation and ask a question. He never asked. He sent me restaurant Instagram posts and called twice in 2 years, both times to ask if I could change the transfer date. I changed it both times. The grand opening invitation came 6 weeks before the event. A stiff cream envelope with gold foil lettering, no personal note. I called the number on the card to ask about accessible parking. I need to know where I'm going in an unfamiliar space, especially at night. And an assistant answered. She was polite. She said she'd pass along the question. Cole didn't call back. I assumed the parking situation was handled. I drove to Charlotte on a Thursday evening in October. 3 hours, my back pressed against the seat, NPR on because silence makes the pain feel larger. I stopped at the gas station on the edge of the city for the white tulips. I walked toward that restaurant feeling something close to pride, not exactly for myself, but for the fact that I had helped make it real. Whatever was on the other side of those glass doors, I had helped put it there. And then I heard Cole's voice through that earpiece. If you have ever quietly held someone else's life together while they treated you like an inconvenience, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment below. Where were you watching from? And what time is it? Let's keep going. I drove home, canceled the transfer, slept better than I had in months. The first 2 weeks after, there was a lightness I didn't know what to do with. Every month, for 2 years, the first week had carried a specific kind of low-grade dread, the checking of balances, the confirmation that the transfer cleared, the arithmetic of what was left afterward. Now the first week was just the first week. I walked to the farmer's market Saturday morning. I bought a basil plant. I had lunch at a diner near my house where 2 of my old nursing colleagues meet every other Tuesday, and I sat in the booth and let something in my chest unclench for the first time in longer than I could remember. 6 weeks passed. Cole didn't call, he didn't text, he didn't send a single word. Not, are you okay? Not, I've been thinking about what happened. Not even a pretense of checking in. Just 6 weeks of silence, so complete it had its own texture. I was in the grocery store on a Thursday afternoon, the Harris Teeter on 6 forks, the quiet hour between lunch and dinner, reading yogurt labels in the dairy aisle when my phone buzzed. I pulled it out and saw his name. Not a call, a text. Hey, the transfer didn't come through this month. Can you check your bank? I stood there reading those words. My cart was half full. There was a container of Greek yogurt in my left hand. 6 weeks of silence, and what broke it was not I've been thinking about Charlotte, not I owe you an apology, not even a pretense of asking how I was. Just, the money didn't arrive. A woman behind me was reaching for the shelf. I stepped aside without thinking and said, "Excuse me," and she smiled and said, "Oh, no, I'm sorry, you were here first, take your time," and then she went around me carefully, making sure not to bump my cane, and said, "Have a good evening," as she passed. A total stranger in a grocery aisle, inconvenienced by me in the most minor possible way, offered more basic human courtesy in 8 seconds than my brother had shown in 6 weeks. I put the yogurt in my cart, I typed back 4 words, "I know," I stopped it, and put my phone away and finished my shopping. He called 4 times before I reached the checkout. 2 texts by the time I loaded the bags into my trunk. "What do you mean you stopped it?" And then, "Abby, this is serious. The lease is going to be short." No mention of Charlotte, no apology. Just escalating panic about money, as though I were a utility that had gone down and needed to be reset. I drove home, I made dinner, I did not call him back. 3 days later, on a Saturday morning, I heard a car in my driveway. I looked out the kitchen window and saw Ingrid's silver Subaru, Cole's wife, a high school chemistry teacher, smart and direct, the kind of person who is constitutionally incapable of small talk when something real is happening. I'd met her 4 times. I wished I knew her better. She was on my porch with a Tupperware container and the expression of someone holding themselves together with both hands. She said, "I didn't know what else to do, so I made banana bread. It's your mom's recipe, the one you gave me on the index card." I let her in, I put on coffee. We sat at the same kitchen table where I'd co-signed the loan 2 years before. She didn't know about the $1,500 a month. She said it quietly, looking into her mug. Cole had described my involvement as helping with the business. She'd understood it to mean occasional support, maybe a small investment, nothing systematic. She didn't know it had been every single month. She didn't know about the loan. I picked up my phone and called Roberto, the restaurant's general manager, a man whose number Cole had given me for emergencies. I put it on speaker and asked him one question. Was my name on the seating chart for opening night? There was a pause. Roberto said carefully that Cole had removed my name from the VIP section 4 days before the event. He said there had been some last-minute adjustments to the guest configuration. His voice was telling me something his words were trying not to. I thanked him and ended the call. Ingrid's face had gone very still. I went to the filing cabinet in my bedroom and pulled out a manila folder. Inside was 24 months of bank statements, each $1,500 transfer highlighted in yellow. I set the folder on the table in front of her. She turned the pages slowly, one by one, the way you read something your brain keeps refusing to fully process. The numbers were simple, the math was clear. $5,500, $5,500, 24 consecutive months. $36,000 from a disabled woman's pension, sent quietly every single month, never once announced, never once acknowledged. Then she took out her phone and called Cole. He arrived in under 3 hours. He came through my front door the way people enter a room when they already know the room has the truth in it. Shoulders up, jaw set, eyes working on a version of events before he'd taken 2 steps inside. He saw the folder on the table. He saw Ingrid's face. He sat down. I gave him a moment to read the first few pages. Then I said, evenly, $36,000, 24 months. You told your staff to redirect me because my cane was going to look bad in the photos. He didn't say he was sorry, not right away. He said, I was under pressure. The investors were all there. I needed that night to look a certain way. I wasn't thinking clearly. He said it the way people say things they know are inadequate, rushing through the explanation to get to something better on the other side of it. There was nothing better on the other side of it. Ingrid said, she was paying your rent, Cole. He started to respond and she said it again, slower, she was paying your rent. The kitchen was quiet. Then Ingrid's phone started going off. She'd been handling some of Cole's business correspondence since his bookkeeper quit 2 months ago. Now her screen was filling up. An email from his linen vendor, account suspended, $4,300 overdue. A message from the building management office, November rent had not posted. A text from his sous chef asking whether they were open Monday because nobody had sent a schedule. For 6 weeks, the restaurant had been running on credit card float, patching gaps that my $1,500 had previously covered without anyone noticing. Now the float was maxed, and the patches were coming off in every direction simultaneously. Cole sat at my kitchen table and watched it happen in real time on a phone he couldn't put down. I watched him. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I felt tired and something that was close to clarity. I said, I'm not going to send another $1. That's done. But if you want to learn how to untangle this yourself, I'll stay at this table with you until we figure out where to start. He looked up at me. He looked the way he used to look when he was 19, and our father had just died, and he didn't know which way was forward. He said, I'm sorry, Abby. I'm sorry about the opening night. I'm sorry about all of it. He said it the way a person says something when they finally stopped running and just sat down exactly where they are. It wasn't everything, but it was real. What came next wasn't dramatic. It was just hard and slow and required showing up every day. Cole closed the restaurant for 3 weeks to restructure. He moved out of his Charlotte apartment, a 2-bedroom he was paying $2,800 a month for, and into Ingrid's parents' house outside the city. He sold the leased Audi and used the proceeds to clear the overdue vendor balance and 2 months of back rent. He called each of his 3 investors personally and told them the exact financial situation, including the parts that made him look bad. 2 were angry. The third, a retired restaurateur from Greensboro, said, the people who call me before I have to find out myself are the only people I keep doing business with. That man stayed in. Ingrid didn't leave. She told me later she'd seriously considered it for about a week. What stopped her wasn't Cole's explanations. He didn't offer many, but the fact that when she asked him to go to counseling, he made the appointment the same afternoon. She said that was the thing she'd been waiting 2 years to see. Not a changed man, just a man who would actually do the hard thing when it mattered. I took care of my own neglected things. I scheduled the epidural injections. I replaced the windshield. I ordered the $480 lumbar chair, the good one my PT had recommended, and when it arrived, I sat down in it and felt my spine settle into a position that didn't hurt, and I just breathed for a while. Saturday mornings, I started volunteering at the food bank off Wake Forest Road. There was a retired pharmacist there named Douglas who was 71 and came every week regardless, and he never offered to carry things for me unless I asked, and that mattered more than I could easily explain. 11 weeks after that Saturday in my kitchen, a card came in the mail in Ingrid's handwriting on the envelope, Cole's handwriting on the inside. The table by the window is yours whenever you're ready. It's been waiting since the day we reopened. Come on a Sunday, no investors, no cameras. I made Mom's chicken and dumplings. I sat with that letter for 3 days. On the 4th morning, a Sunday, I got up early and made coffee and took Paul's carved maple spoon out of my purse, where I always keep it, and held it for a moment. Paul made it during a weekend woodcarving class the summer before our wedding. The only thing he finished, lopsided and impractical, his initials scratched crooked into the handle. He'd pulled it out proudly at a family dinner, and Cole had balanced it on his nose, and Paul had laughed until he was crying, and none of us could stop. I put the spoon back in my purse and got in the car. Charlotte was a little over 3 hours in the morning light. I took my time. The restaurant looked different than it had in October. Smaller, somehow. The velvet rope by the entrance was gone. Through the front window, I could see plain white tablecloths instead of the pressed linen I'd seen in the Instagram posts, and fewer tables. He'd spread them out, given the room to breathe. It looked more like somewhere you'd actually want to eat. Cole was just inside the door when I pushed it open. He had an apron on and flour on his forearm from the kitchen, and he looked like he'd been standing there for a while, just waiting. He looked like my little brother. He didn't make a speech. He said, "Hey, Abs." I said, "Hey." He pulled out the chair at the window table, facing the small courtyard outside where someone had planted a row of rosemary along the fence, and I sat down, and he went back to the kitchen, and I listened to him moving around in there, and I thought about Paul, who would have found his way into that kitchen within 20 minutes and come out knowing everyone's name. Ingrid came out with coffee and sat across from me, and we talked about her students and a hiking trail she'd found, and nothing important and everything that was. Our mother called partway through the meal, and Cole handed me the phone across the table, her voice doing the thing it does when she is trying very hard not to make a production of something that is in fact a very big deal to her. The chicken and dumplings were good. Not quite as good as our mother makes them, but close enough to carry the whole memory of every time she'd made them when we were kids. Winter evenings, the kitchen steamed up, Cole always trying to steal a dumpling before the pot was off the stove. When Cole sat down with us after service, he wrapped his hands around a coffee cup and said, "I've been thinking about what I was so afraid of that night. What made me do it?" He stopped. He didn't have a clean answer, and he didn't try to invent one. Some things you understand a little at a time, and slow understanding is still understanding. I reached into my purse and set Paul's maple spoon on the table between us. Cole looked at it, and I watched him remember the dinner, the balancing act on his nose, Paul laughing until he couldn't. His eyes went soft around the edges. "I still have the picture from that night," he said. "So do I said. We cleared the plates. Ingrid brought out a lemon cake she'd made from a recipe in one of my old cookbooks. We ate it at the window table while the courtyard caught the last of the afternoon light, and I let myself feel the quiet of it. Not fixed, not finished, not even fully forgiven yet, just honest. A table that had been waiting, a chair with my name on it, a brother who had done a terrible thing and was learning slowly, imperfectly, what it cost to earn trust back. You don't rebuild that in an afternoon. You rebuild it the way you build anything worth having, one honest day after another, until one morning you notice the foundation under your feet is finally solid. I drove home to Raleigh with the spoon in my purse and the windows cracked, even though it was cold. Sometimes you need the cold air. Sometimes it's the only thing that makes the road feel real. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been the quiet foundation someone built their life on and then tried to hide from the photos, hit that like button and subscribe. Leave me a comment below. Would you have walked back through that door, or would you have kept it closed? I read every single one.